What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and as you guys know, we have been building up to Deadpool kills Deadpool, and in truth, we've actually got to finish this quick because the death of Deadpool is coming up really, really fast. I think it's issue number 45 of the current run of Deadpool, and we're on issue number 44. So we've got a very limited amount of time before we get into the story of Deadpool dying. So, because we're celebrating the fact that Ryan Reynolds is playing the role of Deadpool, and because Deadpool is going to be rated R, thank God for that. We're going to be calling Deadpool from the Earth 616 in this video Ryan Reynolds. And we're going to be calling the Deadpool from Deadpool, I guess, Kills the Marvel Universe and all that stuff Darkpool, just so we can differentiate between the two. Now, for those of you guys who are new to this whole thing, I would highly suggest you go back and watch the videos about Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, Deadpool Illustrated, the Deadpool Corps. That way you can be current if you're not familiar with those elements of the Deadpool story. So, with that being said, let's jump into it. So, here's the deal. What happens is we pick up with Zombie Deadpool. And if you guys recall, we did that big 15-minute video explaining Zombie Deadpool, and we talked about Zombie Deadpool and how he came about and all that kind of stuff. Well, none of that matters because he dies in the first 3 pages of this story. What ends up happening is it looks like it's Darkpool. It looks like it's the dark version of Deadpool that is basically taking Zombie Deadpool and putting his head in a microwave. Now, this entire time, we get some discussion from Zombie Deadpool. He's talking about how he's a comedic relief and so on and so forth. But the fact remains that at the end of the day, Zombie Deadpool's his head's put in a microwave and he's blown up. And so that's the end of him. So those of you guys who hated Zombie Deadpool, this is your day. You get to see him go away. Now, following this, we switch to Ryan Reynolds, and Ryan Reynolds is fighting a robot that is basically terrorizing New York City. Now, the robot is given, or I guess it's designed on behalf of a group called Ultimatum. Now, Ultimatum is a group we haven't talked about yet, but it's one of the many terrorist groups like Hydra or AIM or something like that looks to basically overthrow governments of the world and replace them with a kind of totalitarian regime. Now, Ultimatum is important getting into the death of Deadpool. That's one of the big things going on right now. And so once we finish this video and we start to get into the death of Deadpool when that time comes, then we'll get into a little more discussion about Ultimatum. But for right now, the only thing we need to worry about is that this robot's basically just tearing up New York City. It's basically just ripping stuff up. And so what happens is it appears that while Ryan Reynolds is fighting this Ultimatum robot, that the Deadpool Corps arrive. And the Deadpool Corps arrive in their ship B. Arthur, which of course looks like a giant Deadpool. And they crash the ship into the Ultimatum robot and destroy it. And so Ryan Reynolds is actually shocked to see the Deadpool Corps is here. And so he begins talking to them. And what happens is that Lady Ryan Reynolds tells Ryan Reynolds that basically they're being hunted down, that they're being tracked down, that somebody in the Marvel multiverse is killing off all their multiversal counterparts, and they've established this kind of rebel group, this kind of renegade group of Deadpools, or I guess of Ryan Reynolds, that are going. This is ridiculous. These renegade groups of Ryan Reynolds that are trying to overthrow the evil version of, overthrow Darkpool. And so what happens here is as the group is conversing and as they're talking, we're introduced to a couple new versions of Ryan Reynolds. That is to say, there's the Golden Age version, which really isn't significant here because he actually dies really soon. But basically what happens is that while the group is talking, they're attacked by what appears to be a version of Darkpool, what appears to be Darkpool himself. And so what happens is Golden Age Ryan Reynolds is killed almost immediately. He's simply just disintegrated. And so this evil version, or I guess this Darkpool, begins to attack the rest of the Deadpool Corps. Now from here what happens is Ryan Reynolds the entire time is basically trying to figure things out. He's trying to understand what in the world is going on here, why people are doing what they're doing, why it is they're being attacked, so on and so forth. But at the same time, he also wants to take his own revenge against this version of Darkpool for killing off one of the members of the Deadpool Corps. And so what happens is he basically uses the vocal patterns of himself to body slide. And what I mean by that is, for those of you guys who are familiar with the relationship between Cable and Deadpool, we knew that they had been friends for quite some time. But one of the pieces of technology that Deadpool, or I guess that Cable has, is the ability to body slide, the ability to use technology to physically teleport. And he can teleport by a factor of anything. He can teleport by a factor of 100, meaning he can body slide himself alongside 99 other people to any kind of location. But most most commonly it's body slide by 1, body slide by 2. What Ryan Reynolds does is he uses the vocal patterns of himself and body slides half the body of this Darkpool away so that he's basically torn in half. And then he uses the ray gun to disintegrate this Darkpool body entirely and just kind of leave it there. And so what happens is the group gathers in B. Arthur, and then they immediately take off for what seems to be the home base of the Deadpool Corps and their base of operations with all these other versions of Deadpool. And so what happens here is we see that Ryan Reynolds is speaking with everybody, trying to understand what's going on. He wants to know why it is they're being hunted down, why it is that they're being killed off. Now, of course, he provides his own manner of comedy and so on while this is happening, but the fact remains that that the Watcher, or I guess a Watcher, appears and basically tells Ryan Reynolds that he's going to be giving him the rundown on why it is things are happening. But what's really cool about this version of the Watcher is, one, it's not Uatu the Watcher, and two, he loves the Deadpool Corps. He's got all this paraphernalia and all that kind of cool stuff, and it actually looks pretty awesome. But what we do before we actually get into the Watcher giving us the rundown of what's happening with everything, I guess explaining all these different things to Ryan Reynolds, is we switch to Darkpool. And so what we learn here is that the Deadpool Corps, when they were being attacked by these evil versions or these dark versions of Darkpool, it wasn't actually Darkpool proper. Instead, it was people fighting on his behalf. And so what happens here is it seems as though he's basically amassed an army. Darkpool has this army of all these different versions of Deadpool. We, of course, see Venom Deadpool. We see Bee-Pool, a version of Deadpool that has bees around his mouth. And what's really kind of funny here is that Evil Deadpool, which is a version of Deadpool that's pieced together by all the different versions of Deadpool himself, basically uses his gun to blow off the head of Bee-Pool. And the whole reason is because he got tired of all the buzzing coming from the mouth of Bees-Pool. And that was it. That was like the only reason. There was no other reason besides that. But what ends up happening is Darkpool begins to speak directly with Evil Deadpool. And what he tells Evil Deadpool is, one, he's glad to have him back, but two, they have a spy among the ranks of the rebels, and that they're basically using information from the spy to determine where it is the rebels are hiding at, and they're in turn going to attack the group entirely. And so what we do is we pick up with the Watcher as he's explaining everything to Ryan Reynolds. And what he says is that for the most part, somewhere along the line, that Darkpool had begun killing off all these different versions of superheroes. We, of course, pretty much see the Watcher telling us everything that had happened in Deadpool Illustrated, Deadpool Kills a Marvel Universe, and all the things leading up to this point. But the difference here is that the Watcher basically says that at some point along the line, Darkpool came up with the idea that the only way for him to basically achieve his goal is to kill off all the Deadpools that exist in the multiverse, because they would be able to stand in his way. They would be able to stop him. So either he can kill them all off entirely, or you can dissuade them to their cause, which is why he has a huge army of Deadpools that are basically fighting on his behalf. And so as a result, what Lady Deadpool tells us, or I guess what Lady Ryan Reynolds tells us, is that the dark version, the Evil Deadpool Corps, I guess is the best way to describe them, that they've been using a multitude of different ways to kill off different versions of Deadpool. Because the question Deadpool has, or I guess Ryan Reynolds has, is if they have a healing factor, how can they die? And what she says is that there are weapons out there that can negate the healing factor of Deadpool or various other versions of Deadpool. There are things out there that will just consume their bodies entirely, so there's nothing to heal back from. There's all different manner of ways to kill off any version of Deadpool, and that's what Darkpool and his group have been using. And so what happens is the Deadpool Corps lands on what appears to be their base of operations, which is like a giant amusement park world. Now, this is probably the coolest thing ever. Like, I would love to live on a world where it's just like amusement parks everywhere, and you just have like the most fun ever, like every day of your life, like riding rides and eating cotton candy and like funnel cakes and all that kind of stuff, as long as it's not overpriced, because like amusement park stuff is overpriced. But nonetheless, the fact remains that what ends up happening here is once they arrive at their base of operations, they realize that pretty much all the members of the Deadpool Corps who were there have been destroyed. They've been killed off entirely. At the same time, Kidpool realizes that it seems as though one of the members of the Deadpool Corps is still alive. And when he goes to turn over the body, he discovers a booby trap. And what ends up happening is there's this massive explosion, and Kidpool is killed in the process. And so what happens is we see that Evil Deadpool arrives along with I guess, Wolverine Pool and several other people, and the groups begin fighting one another. But in the midst of the conflict, we find that Pandapool arrives. And Pandapool is quite possibly the greatest version of Deadpool to ever exist in the history of all the Deadpools who have ever Deadpooled. Like, he's so cool. Like, he shows up and like, quite literally just starts like destroying everybody. I mean, just like swatting at people and scratching them and like cutting them in half, ripping people's heads off. It's unbelievable. Like, it's one of the coolest things ever. And so as a result, the forces of evil Deadpool have kind of been dwindled here. They're down to a handful. But what ends up happening is that while Ryan Reynolds is fighting against evil Deadpool, that the Watcher begins to sort of narrate everything that's going on. He's narrating the discussion, saying regardless of who wins and so on. And then evil Deadpool shouts out to the Watcher, asking if he's going to help or not. And so this is when Ryan Reynolds realizes that the spy that's been inside the Deadpool Corps the entire time was the Watcher himself. And so the question Ryan Reynolds asks is, why would you turn on the Deadpool Corps? Why would you basically fight alongside this evil, this dark version of Deadpool? And what the Watcher says is that he just couldn't pick a side because all the Deadpools were awesome. And so what happens is that while the group is carrying on, while everybody's continuing to fight again, that Galactus Pool arrives. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to end this video. Cliffhanger. But we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.
They call me Deadpool, I'm hella fast. Came to murk the bad guys and get some ass. Got blades for days, got guns galore. Got combo moves, evades and more. With bear traps and hand grenades. Pull the pistol like a maniac right in your face. Popping off caps, leave a trail of guts. Sitting on my chair, scratching my nuts. I can't die, I'm invincible. But if you like to try, then I'll crush your...